Good morning. Well, it's morning time over here. You might be watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening. I have a few minutes, so I wanted to take some time to read you a fun book. So this book is called A Bad Case of Stripes. That sounds interesting. Let's see what it's all about. Okay. Okay, let's see, let me adjust my camera a little bit. Okay, there we go. A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camellia Cream loved lima beans. Do you like lima beans? You never had any? You might have to try some. But she never ate them. Well, that's interesting. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camellia was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits. Oh, goodness, that's a lot. But none seemed right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Oh dear, let's see what happened. Why did she scream? Oh dear. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. Oh my heavens, she cried. You're completely covered with stripes. This was certainly true. Camellia was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camelia's forehead. Do you feel all right? She asked. I feel fine, Camellia answered, but just look at me. You get back in bed this instant, her mother ordered. You're not going to school today. Camellia was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. Oh dear. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camellia. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching? No, Camellia told him. I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me. And off he went. Do you know what the word ointment is? Ointment is cream that usually is for some medical reason. So you put it on the outside of your skin. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camellia. They called her Camellia Crayon, a knight of the living lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal. But when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue. And she broke out in stars. Oh dear. That wouldn't be any fun, would it? Well, the other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camellia turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard." See her arm? It's like a checkerboard style. And a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camellia was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV. Oh dear. The kids thought it was funny, but she did not, huh? That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camellia home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Camellia was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camellia. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans. But she had been laughed at enough for one day. See if we can get that page turned, huh? Let's see. Here we go. Oh, goodness sakes. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grope, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." Then the specialist went to work on Camellia. They squeezed and jabbed and tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Grope. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chicken pox," put in Dr. Cricket. "Or sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take one of each before bed," said Dr. Grope. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Oh, dear. That looked like that was not a fun day for Camellia, huh? Yeah. That night, Camellia took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh dear. That's no fun. It's definitely unique. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called. But this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gourd and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camellia was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers, then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gourd finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camellia. Oh, goodness. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Mr. Melon. I'll pop squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camellia was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camellia, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab, Dr. Gord explained. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts did not have a clue, much less a cure. By now, the TV news had found out about Camellia. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Oh dear. That doesn't look like any fun. Have all those people camped out on your front lawn wanting to get a look at you, huh? One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camellia. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camellia groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. Her nose was a dresser. And 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock on the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. Wonder what she's going to do to help. She went into Camelia's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camellia. Camellia wanted a big heaping plate full of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said, no one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camellia watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camelia's mouth. Said Camellia. Oh, she likes those. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camellia. Everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camellia on the head, then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camellia wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again. That's fun, isn't it? So this book was basically letting you know, don't worry about what other people think of you. If you like to eat something that other people make fun of, you eat it anyways. It's okay. I hope you enjoyed A Bad Case of Stripes. Have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.